Hello and welcome back to the Pinnacle Esports channel. Today we are back for some more IEM Dallas content. We're going to be talking about Group B, joined once again by Brandon and Neo. And I think they're going to be liking the opening team here that they can rip into a bit. So we're going to be talking about EG, the team that lost to an unranked team. Take it away, Neo. Just take it away.
They're catastrophic as an organization, aren't they? They're just all over the place. I mean, they just the decisions they make are so baffling. Like it's one of those things. If you had EG, they have an open slot on the team, and you span a wheel, you never get it right. That's how random some of their choices are. Refresh coming in, I don't mind refresh. I just don't understand why they've gone for refresh. Their problem has never been kind of support. They just desperately need firepower. Automatic, my God, someone help this guy. The guy is in desperate need of someone to support him. Yeah, refresh. If I'm right in saying he's still been playing on like 200, 300 ping in some of these NA qualifiers, so he's having a really tough time. Obviously, his stats have been pretty brutal, but you got to give him kind of the grain of salt there that he is playing on like 200 ping. But even still, they're losing to an unranked team 69 there. I can't even remember the team's name. Like I've never heard of them, and that says so much. This team is just desperate need of something changing. I don't actually mind. Well, I didn't mind kneeling previously, but I just think the system they've got right now for EG is just so catastrophic. It's so reliant on if automatic doesn't drop a heavy amount of kills, there's just no chance. They're coming in as the lowest ranked team in towards this entire tournament, not even just a group. And I think, quite rightfully so. I think they have the absolute lowest chances of picking up wins here. And it doesn't help when, the organization are taking jabs at analysts and commentators, step out the echo chamber. Like, come on, like, you're just not helping yourself. So I think they put a lot of pressure on this team when it's not needed. I think the change of Hex was a pretty good one. I think he's a good kid. He seems very energetic. He's very good for the hype, but I just don't think fragging wise he was all there. I still have so many question marks about Wiz. I really don't rate him as an AWPer. I know he's at these flash moments where he's occasionally good, but it's against very low-level domestic opponents, and we all know kind of the NA domestic scene isn't exactly fantastic. I think for me, Wiz at the moment is really struggling. Refresh the change is a little bit weird. I think this team is just all over the shop, but it's quite funny to see. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You can't look away from it, but you kind of have to keep looking. So yeah, EG are a mess. They should get absolutely battered game one.
Right. How do I follow on from this? I don't have anything against refresh, but if you've got 3 teams under your organization's banner, you need to just bring players up. You don't look outside your organization. That's the sticking point for me. I don't have anything against refresh. I think like if he wants to come away from IGL and Sprout and he wants to transfer over, he wanted a new challenge, he wanted to go to an NA team. Sure. Do you know what? Completely fine. But if you've got 15 players under your org, why not just promote one and just keep trying? Or even just do what you intended to do in the first place, where you had 3 teams, you send different teams to different events, you give them all more experience, you give them all more exposure. I thought that was the entire point of the thing. Maybe I'm missing out what it is,
I
but
think you're right.
it's unfortunate. I would have liked to have seen maybe like, okay, we're going to send EGPA to Dallas. We're going to send the main, or even the main team to Dallas because we're in NA. We're going to send EGPA to Katowice because it gives them experience. We'll give the EG Black Cologne, and we can do it that way. And everyone gets more experience. Everyone builds up, and then look, you're definitely getting consistent game time. You're definitely getting experience. That's what I thought it was going to be. Unfortunately, it's not. They brought in refresh. That's cool. But for me, yeah, the org and just the team is kind of really just downtrending in stock and estimations, and it's gonna be difficult for them, especially because they're going up against FaZe, who have got a point to prove, right? Made it through, get to playoffs for the major, so it's one of those where I feel you put FaZe in a similar category to Heroic, always going to make deep runs in these tournaments, need to make deep runs in these tournaments, need to keep believing in yourself and even to keep proving that you are the best team in the world. I feel like that's a mission statement for FaZe. They need to keep proving to themselves that they can do it as well. And Twists back in NA, it'd be good to see him step up.
Just to add on to that as well, something you mentioned, which is spot on. If you're gonna the whole idea of this blueprint, right, was looking within the rosters, right? They had 15 people. They've obviously dropped one of them now, so they still have 10 people signed. You got to bring people up. But if you're not going to bring people up from your organization, at least bring people from your region. The whole point was meant to build up NACS, and then they completely disregard it the second things go wrong. It's all over the place. I really like the Vorborg as a coaster. I think he's actually pretty smart. And of course, he has experience, top 8 in a major with Copenhagen Flames. So I like him, but I think he needs to shake up the system because right now, yeah, it's not going well.
Rather than bringing people up, they just put people down and then get rid of the players in their lower teams. It's like they dropped
Yeah.
Stanislaw when they first started, and now it's Rush. It's like, who's next? Like, who is going to be next? So, oh man, EG, what a mess. But FaZe, as you mentioned there about twists, Brandon. For me, at the start of the year, he was playing exceptional, one of the best players. And this may just be from where I play a lot of fantasy, and looking at stats because that's what matters in fantasy. His stats have kind of fallen off a cliff recently, where his ratings just aren't up there as far as what they were at the start of the year. Do you think that the reason they're losing could be because of that, or do you think it's something entirely separate?
I don't think it's individuals. I think it's just the team effort of FaZe. Um, there's there's always an argument that could be made for FaZe that like where they've got all these different individuals that can pop off at any moment. You don't have to rely on one single one. It's very map dependent. Maybe like Rain has a really good Ancient, for example, or Rops has a really good Inferno. That's kind of you kind of like marry the players up to the maps. But um, I don't think it's an individual error. I don't think they're doing anything wrong. I just feel like there's there's something just going a little bit strange and towards the mid end portions of rounds, and that does cost them. Feel like they get in their own heads a lot about the opponents that they're facing. Obviously, they did banish their demons, beat Bad News Eagles, but it's always feeling really tricky. And when the narratives kind of get built up, you kind of have this idea in your head. It can't always happen like that, and I feel like if they just focus on the one objective of mind, right? It was always the Grand Slam, right? Now they've achieved the Grand Slam. It's almost like, well, what's next? You need to just have that what's next in your mind. And I
So,
feel like that's the thing for FaZe.
so do you think it's like a lack of goals at this point? It's like they've kind of achieved everything. What do we do?
Uh, it's not. I'm not going to say they don't have goals. That's not fair to the team. But it's like you get off such a high of achieving this, and it's like the Intel Grand Slam. You've done the major. Now, the next logical thing, in my opinion, anyway, is the Counter Strike 2
Yeah.
major. It's like that's where FaZe will focus all of their efforts. So I guess now for me, if I'm FaZe and if I'm any of these big organizations in Counter Strike, it's like I just want to finish CS:GO high on a high. I want to make these deep runs in the tournaments. I want to make sure that my players feel like they're ready and raring to go in CS2, and we don't like bomb out of these groups. Playoffs should be a minimum.
I know one thing that was said across, like I saw on Twitter. I mean, firstly, before I go into that, they, I think it was the last major. There was something like 8 OT games going into their major before they got there, so when they were struggling, like before Rio. And at this stage, it was almost a similar thing, less OT games, but like just comebacks. Bad News Eagles, they won based on a comeback. Navi was a huge comeback. And I saw a lot of tweets saying that, FaZe don't perform unless they kind of need to. They don't feel the need to kind of perform because the game doesn't have meaning until they make the playoffs. It's like quarterfinal game. This is the game to get to the semis. Semifinal game, great. So do you think that's anything to do with it because these games aren't really anything to them?
I think there are sides who are very good under pressure, but mainly because of the fact that there is sides. Some of the other teams they play, like B and E, are a little bit more valuable to pressure. Where for FaZe, they're just so used to this. They're such veterans of the big stage. So for them, it's fine. But I think the biggest problem for me for FaZe, especially at the moment, has always been inconsistency, especially of their big fraggers. I think Rops, mechanically, one of the best players we've got in the scene right now. Unbelievable. When you look through their last, 5 to 10 games, he goes from being top of the scoreboard to bottom every other game. This yo-yoing performance they're having is kind of all over the place. And that is where, for me, you see a lot of the bulk of the problems. Same goes to Brooks Brokey. Sometimes he is untouchable. He's just the best player in the server. And then other times you just don't see him, doesn't show up. So they have these real inconsistencies of their big players. And also, there's definitely argument to be made. And I've seen a lot of this on Twitter about how their goals in life are changing. There's people, making speculations. And when we come towards the CS2 major, Carragher might call it. It's in Copenhagen, in his hometown, right? He might just be like, right, this is me. I've had a good career. I've been here for a long time. Been here since 1.6 or Source. I'm just gonna call it at the final major. Reigns just had a kid as well, like brand new, born a month before the RMR, and even during the RMR when they dropped him towards the LCQ, he went home for a week to go and look after his kid. So there's definitely a change in goals. They've gone from trying to achieve everything to maybe some of their older, the veterans realizing we're slowing down. We're starting to settle down. Carrigan's got a very serious girlfriend or fiance. becoming family men more than kind of just careers. So I think also maybe getting distracted elsewhere, but not in a bad way. Obviously, they still work very hard. But for me, yeah, FaZe, the inconsistencies have been their biggest issue.
Look, I'm just smiling because you said brand new
Yeah.
child, and I really enjoyed that.
Me
Brand new
too.
child, freshly bought.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we saw when they were kind of on the back end of it last year. I think Carrigan was getting married, like you said. Raymond had his kid, and that was kind of when they started not winning all the events as they had in the start of the year. So yeah, FaZe
Your
need.
life goals change.
I think they kind of want to. They're going to want to perform here to try and prove what they can do still. And it's interesting the speculation you said about CS2. Kenny did it in Paris. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
he's the perfect place for Carrigan to do it. Hometown. He's been here for a long time. He's an old boy now.
I know
Why not?
another team that you want to talk about, Neo, Complexity. Do they need changes?
I think so. I think, when Jason Lake was like, we're going to build this juggernaut, we've got, all this money. Who wants to go tier one? Now's the time. They're bringing the team. I think the team is really good. I think TC's the coach is fantastic. I think that they've got these untouchables, is probably the way I put it. There are a few players in this team you just can't move at the moment. I think Floppy, Ricky Cremery, absolute godlike player. I think he's super talented, especially domestic talent. They want to probably stick to their NA core in a way, or at least kind of like their roots to NA with the likes of Floppy and Grim. And I just don't think you can touch those two. They're brilliant. I think JT is also a very good caller. We saw him even when they bombed out of Challenger Melbourne. JT was so clutch time after time. And towards that kind of triple OT they had against Ecstatic, still playing to an elite level. And I think Halzerk has become, everyone kind of loves him now, and he plays pretty well. I think the big one's Fang. Unfortunately, I just think he's a bit of an issue over towards that team. I feel like they need to change up, have a little shake up in the team. And if I was going to pick one person personally, nothing against the guy, I've never met him, so I don't know anything about him, but Fang would be the one for me. I feel like they've got to make a change there. His performance has been middling. Last 3 months he's averaging just a 1 rating, which for a team which is meant to be a quote unquote juggernaut, it's not good enough. If you're going to stick to domestic NA talent, there's a few players you can maybe go for. I know Swish has been in that conversation for a while. I don't think he's bad, but I think if you really want to go top level, you look towards EU, find a very good anchor player from Europe or a good supporting rotate player. And well, there's a lot of them, right? A lot of them who speak English. I think you can find a lot of decent talent there. A rifler who could step in and probably perform a little bit better in my eyes than Fang, who for me just feels, I think he's a safe call at the moment, but I just don't think he's performing well enough.
It's a shame because before they even joined Complexity in Extra Soul, Fang was one of the highest rated players on this team. It was Fang and Floppy doing the business. Even when they joined Complexity, Fang was still having some really good events. And you're right, it's kind of just tailed off. I feel like Complexity really hit and miss. You never really know what you're going to get out of Complexity event to event, and that's the
Yeah.
biggest issue. That's the biggest issue with this entire team. And it's a shame because I really like them. I really like the team. I always want them to do well. And it's a shame when like you feel like they've got the potential to do it, but half the time they don't really achieve it. And so someone's got to change in that team, whether it's a roster change, whether it's maybe a swap of roles. That they obviously lost OC, had to bring Halzerg. So I don't know. They've made changes before. Why not give it a go again? But look, they're on home soil, right? They're in
Exactly.
Dallas, literally Complexity owned by
Yeah.
Dallas, right? So should be high expectations for them. They'll be feeling a little bit of internal pressure, I imagine, from the
Maybe,
organization.
yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they do.
And they play against Ents in the first round, and I'm gonna try and recall this off the top of my head. May be wrong, and but we'll see after the video. I believe Cloud9 won IEM Dallas last year, and when Ents
They did.
went,
They did.
Spinks wasn't able to attend because of visa issues, so Snacks went in his place.
That's right.
Spot
This
on.
time,
Good memory.
they have their Israeli star with them. And all I'm gonna say is one thing here, and I'll let you guys go. But nitr0's, what a player he is.
Start it off, Brandon. I've got high praise, but I might take a while.
It's just endpoint finding these prodigies, right? I mean, they had Boros, they had nitr0's, and they got Heavy God, who looks unreal. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Ents. nitr0's incredible player. I'm really glad he's now got his moment in the sun in tier 1. Because we always knew he could do it, especially watching him a lot in the UK scene. We always knew that he'd be the guy to really step up and have that next challenge, have that next pickup. And really glad he's got it. I feel like the snappy calling works really well for him. Um, I'm impressed with how they've been achieving and how much they've been achieving in such a short space of time. So there's not really too much to say about Ents apart from I expect them to do really well at this event, and I'm glad that they're not plagued by visa issues.
Yeah, I think spot on. I think I think nitr0's is mechanically one of the best players we've got in the world right now. He's really talented as a rifler. Sometimes he's untouchable. I remember covering ESL Pro League conference right at the start of the year. I think it was late January, start of Feb, and I was saying this guy is so tier one ready, but someone needs to take a risk on it and a gamble. And thank God Ents did, because my God, how talented is. We saw at the RMR, they go 0-2. You're thinking his game set, and then nitr0's is dropping 30 kills a map to get them all the way from 0-2 to a major. I mean, this guy is so talented. But also, I think there's a couple of the credits you got to give. I think Diha's really mechanically gifted as well, and an unbelievably smart player. I think it's so underrated how smart Diha is as a player. I think his ability to isolate fights and his ability to kind of mid-round a lot of these situations where maybe, Snappy doesn't have the right information. Diha takes, I think he's a real unsung hero at times towards Ents. And I think Saul, the coach, has set up unbelievable systems. Look how long Ents have been, competing at the top level despite the myriad of roster changes. Saul's been one of the only consistent factors on this team. And I think the systems he set up are really solid. However, we can give them the benefit of the doubt at the major, right? It wasn't exactly the dream run for them when they got towards the Challengers and Legends stage. But I think going forward, this Ents side, they should be pushing to be a kind of regular top 10 team. And then if they don't, then we got to ask questions. But I think right now, I'm like on a scene. I think nitr0's is so talented.
Yeah, it's when you've got a player that is that good on the team, especially because you've got someone like Sunbias there who was carrying Movi to these like playoff placements, and he's just not talked about because nitr0's is so good. It's unreal. So yeah, they didn't have the major run they wanted. Got pretty stomped quite hard by NIP.
But you're happy.
Yeah, we won't talk about that one, especially the follow-up game. But speaking about Apex, who went on to beat NIP, they beat the next team we're going to talk about, Liquid, in the quarterfinals of the Paris Major. And they play against Astralis, which still kind of gets me a bit giddy thinking about, Astralis and Liquid. I know it shouldn't anymore because these teams are completely different. They aren't, the world number one, number two. But one thing I want to say about Liquid, I mean, because there's so much to say about them at the minute. Is Yukinda going to be IGLing this event? Can nitr0, put up another good rating? I say good rating, his best rating in some time. And one of the things that stuck out to me was at the very start of the Legends stage, NAF was like 1-15 or something on the first game of Ancient. He ends up being their highest rated player, but like a 1.24, which to me is unreal. Is he like not spoken about enough as a star? Like, do you think maybe that's just because of his personality, the way he is? He's just so laid back that people don't talk about him like that? Because I feel like he's just, when people talk about this team, NAF is so under the radar. Or is that just me?
I mean, I think that the problem with Liquid, it's so easy to be overshadowed by Yukinda. I think in terms of an entry fragger, he is probably one of the most perfect kind of entry fraggers we got. For example, we saw at the major, Cypher did so well, right? And Cypher said, I mimic my game off Yukinda. I mean, that sort of level of respect of how good of an entry Yukinda is, it's very easy to be overshadowed by him because he's a bit of a highlight reel at times, right? But I think NAF is super solid. The big thing, and something that you mentioned there, was when you see your IGL not IGLing anymore, and obviously he's not the greatest fragger, that's the big issue in my eyes. I really do feel like nitr0's time has come and gone. I feel like there's definitely, if there was going to be a change towards Liquid, because they're very much, in my eyes, in a rot, while I think they're meant to be one of the most premium sides in the world. You spoke about that kind of that 2019 Berlin, right? Astralis Liquid. I never forget it, way back when. And that was peak Liquid, but unfortunately now it just doesn't seem like they're there. Also, Elige hasn't been playing the way that we know and love. I think someone was telling me this is one of his worst years he's had in the last like 6 years being a professional player. So I mean, that in itself is never good to see. For me, the big thing I think is nitr0 struggling. And if he's not calling anymore, there's no real excuses. I think is the big thing. Coming into this game, I'd bank on Astralis all day. Back-to-back CCTs they just pulled off. They're looking like a super solid team, and Liquid, they're looking very beatable for a decent team.
Just to jump on the Liquid thing just for a second, and I'll talk about Astralis. But the reason why we don't talk about NAF is because we expect this high level from him, and he's done it consistently year in, year out. It's the same reason we don't talk about Elige. And it's interesting that now the conversation is coming up that this is Elige's worst year, because finally you're seeing it in the ratings, right? That's why. So you expect this level, and that's just a testament to how good they are as players. That's a testament to how valued they are in their team and how much worth they have in that roster. So makes a lot of sense. You talk about Astralis, you're right, back-to-back CCTs. Blame F did that troll tweet, which is quite funny. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen out of Astralis is obviously utility usage is goes hand in hand with Astralis, but I was casting a lot of their CCT games. It was actually just insane. Like it reminded me of like peak Astralis. So their util was just ridiculous. What's also really good in this team? Everyone is contributing in the kills department. It's not Blame F, it's not Device, it's Blame F, Device, and Altex, and Buzz, and even Glaive. Glaive had a really good event online just recently when they won CCT. Like played incredibly well. Like I was blown away by how much impact and how much just individual firepower has now gone into not only the side gel, but Altex has really just stepped up his game. Buzz looks really good. And what impressed me the most, despite all of that, I'm saying all these good points, what impressed me the most is how disciplined these youngsters are. They don't overextend. They don't try and make these hero plays. You let Blame F do that. You let Device go for the peaks. They play so heavy in their structure and they make zero to minimal mistakes. Like it is actually crazy how much Astralis have gone up in my estimations based off like a month since that change. Like it's so refreshing.
Is this going to be the first tier 1 event where we see this lineup without Zip?
I think
Yes.
so, yeah. Well, especially, I think this is probably one of the well, this is definitely the first big LAN Altex has played. I know he played a couple of domestic ones, the Dust to DK League. They normally have or Power League, and they normally have local ones in Copenhagen. But I don't think he would have ever experienced this sort of crowd. But I don't think that'll phase him. Altex is seriously talented. I mean, anybody who's followed the tier 2, tier 3 scene for a while knows how good he was in the Charlotte talent. They were farming for the longest time. Even in We Play as well, when they were brought in very late into that sixth season, you could even see when he was decent. When Fessa was moved off the team, Altex and Buzz, these youngsters who are unbelievably talented. Of course, Buzz playing with Sonic from right and saying way back when he was seriously talented as well. So I'm glad they've changed their mindset. They're no longer this, powerhouse tier 1 team who compete in every big tournament. They know they've got to now do essentially the Gambit strategy, which is what made Gambit good, is play every online tournament.
Yeah.
And actually, this is the biggest issue that Complexity have right now. They don't play enough Counter-Strike. And it has been a bit of an issue for them. And same thing has to be said over towards the Astralis. Mal's the same issue. Mal's coming towards the major, had 34 maps played. That's it. Where he saw a team like Monty at 163 before the champion stage. That's the difference, right? But seeing this level of how online Counter-Strike, and now for me, when you've seen Apex, Monty, Gamer Legion all do well on the champion stage and into the breach as well, it proves that online Counter-Strike and grinding out, just getting reps and officials, the way these tier 2 teams do means a lot. And I think Astralis doing the absolute right thing. It's very easy to dislike the organization, but I cannot fault them at all for what they're doing right now. They're doing everything right by the books.
And I think that the Zip change was kind of a long time coming for most. It's sad as it is in someone who's been so decorated in this org. So sorry, you gonna say something, brother?
Yeah, like with the Zipnix thing, it's like the reason why you have him for so long on that roster is because you rely on his clutch in. Well, the biggest difference now with Astralis then to Astralis present day is I don't actually need to rely on these clutches because everyone in the team has got an even kill distribution.
Yeah, another thing as well, just a Zip. I think we spoke about this a little bit towards the Group A video, but when you lock people into these long contracts, right? I think he was locked into kind of 5-year extension. I think it was meant to end of 2025. That's how long it was. I mean, you're really trying to get water out of a stone there, out of this guy who's, he's experienced, but he's pretty damn old. So this is the unfortunate thing about these really long contracts, because now they don't want to get rid of him because they're going to have to pay out the rest of his contract till the end of 2025. They may as well use him in the talent team. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's the real negative side of these super long contracts.
It's a strange one as well because they kind of signed that contract with him after they'd had all their success, which didn't make too much sense to me. But I mean, even when you look at Liquid, maybe they're in a similar situation with Nitro. It's like it's a player. If your Kinder can prove that he can IGL, can keep up the same form, maybe you put a Leech back into one of those main entry frag roles, so that, because who knows, maybe that's the reason Leech hasn't been performing as well. You've got your Kinder who pretty much plays the same role, so get rid of Nitro, pick up Frozen. Maybe.
Okay, I like that.
But yeah, that's going to be a good matchup. I think people are going to really enjoy. I mean, people must just enjoy seeing Liquid Astralis play, even though it's not the same. You've still got pretty much the same cores there, so
it's history.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game. The last one is C9 Greyhound, and C9 missed the major. Greyhound, what was it they said? Fuck your pick'ems was the go-to statement. They did it again. I saw Foreign was very upset, which was funny. And do you think C9 are going to be able to bounce back into this event? Because as we were saying, they won the last one. Do you think they're going to have any problems playing back at a good level here?
Take it away, Brandon. Kickstart us.
I hope so. And the biggest issue for me is it's going to be the same as kind of all the analysts are saying, but it's the utility usage on the T side. It's just terrible. Like, it's really frustrating to watch at times because there's so much utility in their pockets and they don't throw it. The mid rounds sometimes are just incredibly slow for no reason. It feels like some of their game plans aren't fully fleshed out, which is something you don't associate with Gambit, something you don't associate with the Cloud9 team, and it's really upsetting. I feel like Buster has been given a lot of unfair flack. I feel like he's actually not been doing a bad job, and if they keep performing under expectations of not only the organization but as of the team, then you got to start calling this question for changes. But I really like this team. I've always liked this team. You've got one of the best riflers. This is the key thing, right? Key centers. You're one of the best riflers in the world. You're one of the best AWPers in the world. How are you not making deep runs?
Yeah, that's why everyone calls for Nafany's head, right? Because you've got coming off the back of the end of 2022, you've got the third best player in the world and the third best AWPer in the world, Shiro. You got the fourth best player in the world and the best rifler in the world, Axel. Like you simply can't. There's no excuse anymore to be losing. I think a lot of people call towards Nafany, but maybe actually the change I think might even be a little bit higher up. I actually wouldn't mind seeing Groove move to a little bit more of a general manager role and be involved in changes, but bring in another coach. I feel like maybe they just need a little bit of a change in system. Nafany seems to be one of the issues that a lot of people tail towards, but I'm still not fully sold on it yet. I think they've got a myriad of issues, top to bottom, and they need to kind of start sorting them out. But I agree. I don't think Buster's an innate problem. I just don't think it was worthwhile in my eyes, the Axel change. I really like Axel. I think he's a support player. His supporting util supporting stats were fantastic, right? I think he had very good util usage, which is something they lack. He was very, very good as a supporting rifler. Again, something at times they lack. So for me, while at times his stats took a hit, it was because he was doing it for the betterment of the team. So yeah, the interchange I'll always still be a little bit salty about because I think he's one of the best support riflers in the world at the time, alongside people like kind of Perfecto and whatnot. But you can't really take, you look at the recent results. Number one in Brazy Party, one of the weirdest names of a tournament, but actually a very respectable win over Astralis as well, as we've just spoken about them doing really well in online tournaments. And then before that, IEM Rio, third, fourth is actually not bad again, right? This is a team who just bombed out of the RMR. And then to go straight to IEM Rio and finish in the top four is not too bad at all. They lost to Vitality as well, who are now the major champions. So again, we can say not too shabby. I think Cloud9 are actually a bit of a sleeper for this tournament.
Yeah,
I really think they're a bit of an underdog. I would be actually, we look at this group, I'm just looking through it now. I'd actually be kind of surprised. They could actually go the distance. I feel like, let's say Astralis take Liquid. I think they could beat Astralis in that game, especially in a best of three. And you go towards the final game, which is most likely FaZe. Well, I definitely think FaZe the favorites. I think there's a real opportunity. I think, honestly, they're a real sleeper for this tournament.
There's one thing, if it is a Liquid C9, and that is that Liquid do just beat C9. And I've tried explaining this with one of my friends who writes articles for our League of Legends, Jacob, who Brandon also knows. He is adamant that this doesn't happen. But if you look up at the statistics, Liquid they just beat C9. I don't know what it is, but they just do it. It's how they made the finals of EPL season 16. They beat them. And I don't understand what happens there, but they just do it. And it's like, maybe they shouldn't, especially back then in EPL season 16, because they just had the Yakinda change. And yeah, so I worry about that. But your point that you say about maybe it's more upper on the change that's needed. There's rumors about Blade.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the reason why I think Groove should move to GM, and I think Blade should come in as a coach. That has been but for a long time. My thought for a long process was Groove should move to GM and someone should come in as a coach. But the rumors that MPL and Blade are being dropped from the team, unfortunately MPL he's just not been good enough. And Blade, I think obviously there definitely is an issue there, and maybe he just wants to have the grass always greener, as they say, move on to newer pastures. Cloud9's not a bad one for him. He knows the play as well. I think it's actually a decent position for him. But just to touch on something, by your own same logic, you say Liquid beat C9. Greyhound also beat C9.
I was going to say that.
So, just going to throw that one up there. If we look at this, it's a best of one as well. They did it at the Rio Major. So
Dust2 isn't here anymore, and Shiro's not going to freeze in a crucial round, right?
Okay, all right.
That's the argument. I don't think it's going to happen again. I don't think Greyhound are FaZe's BNE.
Okay.
I like that one.
It's a good one. Okay, so do we think Greyhound are gonna do. If I'm not mistaken, they will play the loser of Liquid Astralis.
Yes,
So
yeah.
they have it tough. They have it very tough. Do you think they
Yeah, they do.
are they out?
What I want to say for Greyhound is that I've seen notable improvement from them, and they are looking better every single event they play in. And I said to you, even one of these videos, actually, I can't
Mhm.
remember what one it was, but I said to you like they're gonna get like 2 wins, and they
Yeah.
did. So I think that they're definitely on the up. I feel like that they are a good team. They should stick together and keep going because they got the right formula. They're obviously on that upwards trajectory. I think it's just a little bit upsetting the draw that they have, but they really like proving people wrong. They thrive as the underdogs, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, just to touch on that, I actually still think Greyhound are actually a little bit underrated. I think they actually play some very good Counter Strike. The only problem for Greyhound is they actually play too simple of a style of Counter Strike. They trying to adopt this EU meta, but it's very standard. They're very heavy on defaults, but they're very standard defaults, which are very easy for teams to read into. But I think there's a lot to like about this team. I think Alistair is one of the greatest things that's come out of this region for a long, long time. You know, people like to talk about Dexter, but I think Alistair is unbelievable. When he steps up, sometimes he can have unbelievable performances. But Inns, for me, this is the big man. Inns is the one who makes a difference. When we look towards Greyhound and towards last year, you know, even the previous major when it caused a little bit of a ruckus, they are still going through these changes. You know, they just dropped Hats and they brought in the new boy of Vex. I think Vex is only still like 19 years of age, but he is the one we're looking towards. You know, Vexite is to Greyhound what Yekindar is to Liquid, right? He is like their rifler who should make a difference, and I think he's now starting to. This Greyhound team are actually pretty damn good. They could cause upsets, but they've got a super tough draw. I think if it is Liquid who drop in, I think Liquid just beat them on depth of map pool more than anything. And of course, I guess more experience. So anyone who's really got a lot of LAN experience is Liaz in this team. And that's always going to be a bit of an issue. How do they affect with the crowd? They love the crowd a little bit. They love the old, you know, fuck you, pick 'em stick. But at the same time, they definitely do come into this as one of the heaviest underdogs.
As long as Liquid stop picking Nuke into all of these matchups and losing it, then we're all good. But
I never understand that.
it's quite fitting, isn't it, that they're the underdog given their name is Greyhound. So it's quite nice to see how they're gonna do into this event. So it's also one last thing to touch on before we end this episode is they aren't the lowest odds to win the entire event, which is weird to see Greyhound in an event and be like, you know, they're not bottom of the barrel. I believe
It's got to
EG
be EG,
is,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it has to
So
be.
who knows what they can do here? It's very tough, very unfortunate for them. But this has been our Group B little analysis video. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe as always. Check out these guys on their socials. And yeah, thanks for watching.